Hey y'all, this is Mrs. Tran-Bloom. How are you guys doing? This is Friday. Happy Friday. So this video is to review our Algebra 1 skills, okay? In particularly in factoring trinomials and factoring sum and difference of two cubes and the difference of two squares, okay? So notice how I just have scratch papers here. I honestly was not going to do this video, but I think there is a demand for this, hopefully. So what I would love for you to do is take out a blank piece of paper, computer paper or line paper, it doesn't matter, and write this down like old school, right? So let's call this factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient greater than 1. Okay, because a lot of you do know how to factor a trinomial that's with the leading coefficient 1, but when we get to something that's not 1, then that's where I saw on the exam a lot of troubles are coming from. All right, so let's see, what do I want to use today? 3. What variable should we use? 3 what? 3 apples? Sounds good. 3 apples square minus 2 apples take away 5. And I'm going to ask you to factor this, right? Oh, that looks like a p. Well, that's lame. Okay, they have to be the same variable, okay? Doesn't really matter. You don't have to use apples. You can use x, you can use p, you can use w, you can use the initial of your name. It doesn't matter as long as you put in a variable. All right, so, well, how I, as the teacher and as a, when I learned how to factor this in Algebra 1 in many moons ago, I kind of learned it by guess and check method. So I'm going to show you all of the methods that you can use for factoring. So I'm going to divide this into 4 quads. See this right here? Whoop. Okay. So the first quad, I'm going to show you how to do it by guess and check. Okay, this over here I'm going to show you how to do it with the box method, and this on the bottom I'm going to show you how factor by grouping, and this one it's called a bottoms up. Okay, all of these things. So 4 different ways to factor one problem. So here you go. When I learned this back in the days, right, I factor by guess and check, which some of you guys do. So I look at 3x squared and I said, well, the factors for 3 is really just 3 times 1. So I'm going to write 3 and 1 here. 3 times 1 is 3. And the factors for 5 is really 1 and 5. So I'm just going to write 1 and 5 or 5 and 1. So what if I write 5 and 1 first? Then what I'm really do is, hey, you know what? When I multiply these, okay, so this is really my goal. Oh, by the way, this is -5. Okay, so one of these has got to be negative. You just have to be smart about which one. When I cross multiply, so 3 times 1 is 3. Right now, add it to 1 times 5 is 5. So 3 plus 5 does not give me -2. Well, one of this is negative, so this is going to be a negative. Okay, let's do it again. 3 times 1 is 3. Add it to, so 3, add it to 1 times -5 is -5. When I add it together, excuse me, I'm going to end up with a -2, which is exactly what I want in the middle. Can you guys see that right there? My goal is to get this piece in the middle. All right. So with guess and check, that's what I'm doing to get the middle term, moving this thing around a little bit. Okay. That's the bell to go to 5th period. Okay, so now when I'm writing my 2 factors, I don't write it diagonally. I actually need to write it across. Okay, so 3a minus 5 and 1a minus 1. Or in this case, I'm sorry, not minus 1, but plus 1. So that's a guess and check method. Well, guess and check. Hint, checked. 3 times a is 3a squared. 3 times 1 is positive 3a. Negative 5 times a is negative 5a. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. This middle becomes negative 2a. Therefore, I know my two factors are correct. Okay. So notice how that requires a lot of organization that is really not written out. Now, if you're super good with basic, math, then this is the perfect method for you. Now, but if you're not organized and, you like to see everything, and that's really me, I like to learn. I'm a visual learner, so when I learn, I have to look at stuff. Okay, so this is where the other three methods will come in. All three of these will require you to make your x, okay? And I'm going to explain, and you've seen this x multiple times before. In the middle, it's always going to be the middle term, which is negative 2a, so just middle term, okay? On the top, you're going to multiply the first and the last. So 3a squared times negative 5, which is negative 15a squared. All right? So let's repeat that. On the top, and you should really spell this out for yourself, which is the product of first and last terms. Okay? And when I say the product, you have to order these from high to low to no a. Okay? So now, the trick is I would like for you to find two missing terms here. When you multiply, gives you negative 15. And when you add those two terms, gives negative 2. So when you product, that means negative 15. So the product of 15 is 1 and 15, right? 3 and 5. So 1 and 15, when I add them, doesn't matter what I do, I would never end up with negative 2. So the smart choice is 3 and 5. And they both have to have a here, right? Because I'm adding to give 2a or negative 2a. Well, 5 times 3 is positive 15, but I want a negative, so one of these has got to be negative. And when I add, it has to be negative 2. So the larger, okay, when you add it is negative, this right here determines what sign the larger number must get. Okay, if this is a positive, then the larger number has to be positive. If it's a negative, then the larger number's got to be negative. All right, so now that we have your x, the box method says this. And this is really more useful, more applicable than any other method, because this one actually does make sense. So if I give you 3a squared minus 2a minus 5, and I said, if this is the area of some square or some rectangle, can you possibly find me the dimensions, right? That means what's the length and what's the width. And so that's why factoring, I know factoring, it seems like we just use it for something else, but it's really useful to find the dimension of a rectangle. So this is, I'm going to put 3a squared first box. Last term goes in the last box. These two terms can go in any box you want. You can switch them however you like. So let's go negative 5a here and positive 3a there. All right. So I would like to find the dimensions of this rectangle. I have the area written inside. So I'd like to know how long this is and how long this is. So that's where we're going to look at this. These two, I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor. So they both have an a in it. So I'm going to factor out an a. Okay? Well, if I factor out an a, 3a squared divided by a is going to be 3a. Negative 5a divided by a is negative 5. Bring the negative and positive out. Then over here, look at this piece. There's really nothing in common except a positive 1. So take out a positive 1. So if I take out a positive 1, I'm going to end up with 3a minus 5. Because really, 3a divided by 1 is 3a. Negative 5 divided by 1 is negative 5. So check this dimension and this dimension. Because it's a rectangle, the top and the bottom should always be equal. And this is another dimension. Okay, so when you write your factors, you don't need both of them. You just need to write one. Okay, because these are identical. So your factors for this is going to be a plus 1, which is this piece, and then times 3a minus 5, which is that piece. So that's the same as what we had before. Okay, so that's your box. All right, and this is how I taught Algebra 1, okay, using the box method. Another method we can use by factoring, okay, factoring by grouping, which again, you're going to need your x, the same x that you made before. So let's write down the equation again so we can remember. Okay, so we're going to fill out the box the same way. In the middle, you're going to put, I hope you said the middle term, which is negative 2a. On the top, what do we put? The product of the first and the last two terms, right? So that's 3a squared times negative 5. That's a negative 15a squared. We're going to find two terms. When I multiply, okay, when I multiply, gives me the top. And when I add, gives me the middle. So 1 and 15. When I multiply, it gives me 15. Or negative 1 and positive 15 give me negative 15. But and when I add it up, it's not going to give me this. So 3 and 5, and put in your a. One of it's got to be negative. And remember we said if this is negative, this is going to be negative. So I'm pretty much done with my x. Now, just like the box, we're going to copy 3a squared over. Give it some space. Copy the negative 5 over. Give it some space. I'm converting the negative 2 into these two things. Okay? So negative 5a, positive 3a. This goes here. Okay? So now factoring by grouping, which you can only do when you have 4 terms. I'm going to group the first two, and I'm going to group the last two. And sometimes you do have to switch these around. Okay? Now let's check this out. The first two terms, I have a in common, so factor that out. When you factor that out, you got 3a minus 5. Okay. Now I'm going to factor this out. Nothing is in common, so you do need to bring down the plus sign, or if there's a negative sign, you take out the negative. And nothing's in common, you write 1. 3a divided by 1 is 3a. Negative 5 divided by 1 is going to be negative 5. So now you went from 4 terms to 2 terms. This is 1 term and this is 1 term. Okay? Now, these 2 terms have this right here in common, which is 3a minus 5. So factor that out. If I take this whole piece and divide it by 3a minus 5, I'm only left with a. And if I take this whole piece right here, including the 1, and divide it by this, I'm left with positive 1. And that is done. And those again are the 2 factors. Okay. Bottoms up. And again, if I'm going too fast, just hit pause please, and just that way you can soak it in, finish copying before you go on to the next method. All right. Bottoms up. Again, you're going to make your x. Let's just pretend that we have not seen this x before, so we can make it again on our own. Okay. So go ahead and fill that out. I'll give you a second. Okay, so this is minus 2a, the middle term. This is the product of the first and the last. In the middle, we have done this before, so we know it's negative 5a and 3a. All right. Now bottoms up. We don't need anything else. We're just going to use this x. Well, the trick is I'm going to have to divide the terms you found by the very first term. Okay, and look at this. The very first term. Very first term, which is 3a squared. Okay, so divide that by 3a squared. 3a squared. And in math, you have to reduce. So this reduces down to the a and the a. One of it is going to cancel, so you just have negative 5 on the top. And then we have 3a on the bottom. Okay, so that's what this reduces to. Over here, it looks like I can reduce the 3 and the a, so 1 is on the top. And 3 divided by 3, that's 1. And then a squared and a, I have 1a in the bottom. So that's what it reduces to. Now, there's a reason why this is called bottoms up. Remember, when you're factoring, usually you have this format, right? So this is, now you got 3a, it's called bottoms up because you write the bottom first. 3a or a, okay? These two bottom terms, they go first. And by the way, you can switch these. Okay? You just have to put them first, doesn't matter. Now, this is a plus 1 because that's a positive 1. So a plus 1. And this is 3a minus 5. So that's 3a minus 5. Okay? All of these, doesn't matter the method, you should always come up with the same exact direction. Okay? So, now let me give you like what? Since you have a quiz coming up, I'll give you a couple of practice problems, okay? Here on the bottom. And then you can ask me if you want to know the answer. If not, that's cool too. So why don't you practice these? Okay, so 7a squared plus 53a plus 28. Ooh, those are huge numbers. All right. Okay, give you some smaller ones. 2v squared plus 11v plus 5. Okay. Try those out on your own. Take a picture of your solutions. Text your friend. Compare your answers. If you really want to know what the correct answers are, you can ask me before class start. So this is the end of factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient. I'm going to do another video on factoring sum and difference of two cubes. Have a good one.